Welcome back, and we finally have made it to the Divine Comedy top three. If you've stayed this long, you could you're probably only a Divine Comedy fan. There's no way you're just a random music fan if you've stayed this long with us, I'd say.
A Divine Comedy fan or somebody who's just very curious and can't wait to see.
Or somebody who's very curious, has good taste, is enjoying the podcast.
Yeah, and gets all our jokes. And
have we had any jokes? Not too many. But yeah, so number three anyway. It's actually from the point of view of scores. We both rated it fourth on our list. So 4 plus 4 got 8 points.
We have a tie here for second place, though.
Yeah, but I think we'll go. I'm happy enough if you are to let that other album be second place. And
Okay,
be third.
that's fine. Yeah. I'm happy with that. Yeah.
All right. We'll keep you all in suspense for number 2 and number 1. But fin de siècle, if I probably butchered the pronunciation, I think it means end of century. In France, and Neil is very much. He's actually Divine Comedy were very popular in France and in many European countries, but particularly France. You know, they've always had a big fan base in France, and I think look at Foreverland. He went full Frenchy in that
with Napoleon Complex
and Napoleon Complex and the likes. But look, this to me was his you know, as I mentioned before, you know, he heard Up on Computer, and you know, he saw how they dealt with societal malaise so well in that album, and he, you know, was always singing songs from the point of view of a character, you know, very much inward songs that explored the inner psyche. But in this album, he explores more kind of societal malaise and has a little bit more social commentary, and I suppose there's an aspect of anxiety about. It's certainly not a very optimistic album. There's certainly a lot of anxiety about what can happen. Now there are a few optimistic songs which we will point to, there's one in particular. But yeah, I think it's a cracking album. It's a real kitchen sink album where, as I said, Edwyn Collins had this big hit, and Satanta just threw money at them, and they got the full orchestra in. You could really see the influence of Joby Talbot for some of the songs like Generation Sex and Commuter Love and Certainty of Chance, and a lot of these songs. Yeah, I think it's a strong album from start to finish. And I tell you what, I'll just hand it over to you. But what your thoughts are?
So, Likes of Generation Sex is one of the singles that when I listened back this time round, I enjoyed a lot more than what I remembered of the song. I always thought of it as a novelty song, but I enjoyed listening back here. The songs like National Express, National Express, it's one of those songs when I heard it on the radio, it was grand, but I never, maybe I've heard it too much, maybe that's what's wrong. But so that's the down mark for me, if anything, on this album. But there are some highlights. The Certainty of Chance is one of his, is back in sort of the category of Divine Comedy song where it's a bit more epic and there's a lot going on. There's a lot of sort of orchestral work there, and it doesn't quite soar as high maybe as the others, but it gets pretty good distance on it. Life on Earth, it sort of reminded me of Jan Tiersten type song. You have the accordion, I think, in there, so that felt a bit French. Maybe that's why they're going
definitely
to
the French accordion is in full flow in that song. Yeah.
Eric the Gardener, it's fine. It's not bad. I find it quite I find it a bit monotonous, but maybe that's just me. And then Sweden, I didn't really like Sweden, I have to say, but so some high points, but I wouldn't rank it. It wouldn't be with all the hits of some of the other songs that the next two.
Still have it as your number 4. It's just strange. I think we're all confused about our ranking here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look at
Sunrise as well. Actually, is another highlight. So there are some good, and the highlights are a bit higher. Like Sunrise is a bit higher than some of the others. So
are you telling me that National Express is one of the weakest songs on the album for you, or one of the least enjoyable?
It's my least favorite. I'd put it that
out
way.
of all the
yeah,
albums. So Divine Comedies
Very
most
good.
popular song, their breakthrough song, is your least favorite song on this album. Well,
If anything, that makes me a true fan. But I
yeah,
don't know.
yeah. That's the type of thing a true fan would say. Yeah. But look, I think there's a lot of great stuff. Just going through the album here, like Generation Sex. One of the things I'm not crazy about is the kind of the rhythm section in that song. It's just kind of very bland, bump, 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 bump. So I'm not crazy about the drumming, but I think it saves really by the orchestral stuff at the end, where again it's just when Divine Comedy at their most epic, and I think this album is actually Divine Comedy at the most overblown and their most epic. That's exactly the type of Divine Comedy I really enjoy. So and Generation Sex, where that the orchestration starts really building up towards the end.
Yeah.
And as you use the phrase, like it builds to a great crescendo, and I like songs that have a climax that build to a climax.
And that's
I
something
think
like I didn't remember that crescendo from what I knew of the song. No, I don't know. It's only 3 minutes long, so obviously it wasn't the main song. But yeah, that's something that I was only remember about. I only remembered, I only realized when I was listening to it this time, which
yeah.
which is a positive in the sense that I enjoyed it more than my old impression of the song. Um,
Well, I'm definitely happy to hear that. And there's some cool lyrics on it as well, like morning nation weeps and wails, but keeps the sales to keep the tabloids healthy. Like, and he's kind of having a go not just at the tablets but at us because we enable the tabloids and we kind of
Yeah.
by buying them and like we it's referring to obviously to the divine or to the Princess Diana tragedy. There's some also weird lyrics about Generation Sex injects the sperms of worms into the eggs of field mice so they can look real nice for the boys. I've no idea.
Was that about? Is he talking about cosmetic industry and all that sort of stuff and testing and
Yeah,
things
and
that go
I
on there?
suppose like in the next album as well. I think he definitely does seem to have a bee in his bonnet about kind of the beauty industry and this kind of superficial narcissism regarding kind of the appearance and just this obsession with kind of beauty. I suppose that society has. That's definitely definitely something that you can see that he has been on in his music. Thrill Seeker, I think again, just cracking, really energetic, lively song. About and I think it's well like great orchestration as well. Great catchy chorus. I'm a thrill seeker, baby, honey, I can't help it. But I love the kind of the sound where like the character, like again, he's very much in character mode here, where the character just kind of spirals. Like you can you listen to the song and you learn that he's actually singing while
Yeah.
while he's spiraling out of control because the ripcord was faulty when he was like so there's a kind of a humorous aspect to it as well where he's spiraling and the music captures that really well where it's like
Yeah.
like and it captures it really well like I think and it's just a fun song. I want to draw attention to Commuter Love because I love the lyrics on that song. I think that's a really classic. It's like a deep cut from the Divine Comedy catalog, I suppose. I just love the kind of lyrics, like they were, it's about he meets a woman, or not. He doesn't meet a woman, but like he's at the train station. He sees a woman on a daily basis, and he's sort of this kind of. It's about projection, and he kind of falls in love with her, and he projects onto her what he fantasizes about them being together. Like it's in some ways it's a sense of objectification. Like, but human beings is this we are a bit like this.
Yeah.
But there is a great lyric, and I'll let you respond to it now. In a second, I'll let you speak in a second. Just hold on. But where it's she doesn't. I don't know. It's not that where he goes. I'm not going to say I'm obsessed. I don't want to see her undress, but we can be prince and princess in my dreams. Like it's this kind of he's sort of the character is trying to convince himself that his intentions are pure. I don't want to see her undress. He's sort of convincing himself I'm not obsessed, but then after 2 lines later he's saying, but we can be prince and princess in my dream. And I just think it's just kind of a really funny kind of
Well, as it touches on the theme of like unrequited love or being afraid to go out after, or pursue. It's a bit like Songs of Love was a bit like that as well, I think. So it's a
oh
common enough
yes,
theme.
yeah, for sure, yeah, which we will get to. But even I like she doesn't know I exist. I'm going to keep it like this. I'm not going to take any risks this
Yeah.
time. It's sort of, but in a way, there's the kind of a way in which like maybe we can all relate to it a little bit. Like we've all kind of been at an airport or a train and we've saw, seen someone we find attractive. Like you don't get obsessed like that. Like but you do sometimes wish. Geez, I wish I could just go up and and chat her up. Like I need a few drinks. But there is a kind of thing where it's unhealthy as well. Like there's an unhealthy kind of projection, an underlying kind of maybe even a little bit sinister. There's a sinister aspect to it as well.
Really, yeah, I didn't get that. But
No.
I didn't I haven't listened to it as often as you have.
Yeah, well, I think it's a legitimate reading of it, and it doesn't have to but you don't have to read into that way as well. Like, but and then I actually think it's funny as well. I just think
Yeah.
that so it's got a bit of everything in it, bit of humor, a bit of
Eric the Gardener, I find it quite monotonous and not in a good way. But I can see like
it's a very divisive song.
The instrumentation is, it is a bit interesting and it does hold your attention to a certain extent, but I don't know. It just doesn't do it for me. What attracts you to the song?
What attracts me to the song, Eric the Gardener, is I just love the lyrics. I love the lyrics. Now, I just had to get them up now, if you don't mind me. But I just love Julius Caesar came, saw, conquered, went away, 'cause it rained here all the time. Too many sniffs and colds, got up his Roman nose, so he left it all behind for Eric the Gardener to find. The idea, I think there was this gardener, Eric Laws, I think, or something, in somewhere in Britain, discovered loads of kind of Roman artifacts, kind of like, very like jewelry, not jewelry, but
Yeah.
pretty obvious prized possessions, whatever, for from the Roman days, whatever. But there's other lyrics like Julius Caesar knew that when his life was true, something of him would stay behind, not in a Roman tomb or in an Italian womb, but buried deep in English slime for Eric the Gardener to find. And then finally, the last verses: Julius Caesar sleeps soundly beneath your feet with the rest of humankind. Dig deep and dig some more. Dig to the planet's core. Dig till you're out of your mind. But all you will ever really find is Eric the Gardener. All you can ever hope to find is Eric the Gardener. So I think it's about this notion of legacy and how even like we all want to have a legacy, but ultimately even Julius Caesar doesn't have a legacy. Once he's buried deep underground, what he's just like Eric the Gardener. He's just like an ordinary man like Eric the Gardener.
Yeah.
He's just going to be food for worms, and it sort of is reminiscent of kind of some of the Ernest Becker stuff. Is that we all are very anxious about death because we can't imagine ourselves not having some kind of effect on the world when we pass from this life. Yeah. So that's why I think it's. And I think musically it's great, but I do get you. It does seem to go on, like orchestral work is lovely, but it goes on forever and ever and ages and ages.
Yeah, which is not necessarily bad. Like, for example, The Certainty of Chance. Oh, that's not quite as long, but it's still a long song. But there's more going on. It holds your attention. There's a bit of an ebb and flow there. I feel like the monotony doesn't work as well in Eric the Gardener than it does, say, for example, in Eye of the Needle, which it just fits perfectly for me anyway. But yeah, that's basically it.
I'll have two more songs to come up, but Here Comes the Flood. Just briefly, Here Comes the Flood is kind of again another flamboyant, just totally out of control song, which basically is accounting all the potential ways that there's going to be an apocalypse, like, you know. So again, it points to the kind of the sense of anxiety about the future at the turn of the new century. But Sweden as well is a funny, like, it kind of, I really like Sweden. Like, it's kind of like, once again, totally over dramatic music, very kind of serious dramatic music with totally naff lyrics that at times, you know, come across a little bit fascistic. Like, it's kind of like, you know, he's talking about Sweden, all the great things about Sweden. I would love to go to Sweden when my when my work is done. But he starts listing off all these just totally superficial reasons, but also the notion of, you know, young and healthy, tall and blue-eyed.
Yeah.
You know, there's a sort of and again, you could argue that maybe it's him foreseeing that there is going to be a rise of fashion. Maybe I'm giving him a little bit too much credit, but it's you know, like,
He was
you know,
well
maybe
ahead of
I'm
the
hunting for a
curve there.
subtext that isn't there, but yeah, there is that element of it. But it's funny as well where he kind of goes Inger Bergman, and he names all. He actually gets Henry. He says Henrik Ibsen, who's actually Norwegian, but so he got that wrong. Maybe he got it wrong on purpose, because the idea is that no, I'm not going to give him that much credit. I think he definitely got that wrong by accident. But the idea, he's coming up with more and more stupid reasons for putting Sweden on a pedestal, and he even says the last thing he says is Nina Persson, I think, who was the lead singer of the Cardigans.
All right, yeah.
You know, and she puts her alongside Inger Bergman and the likes. Apparently, she fancied him back in the day. I was reading, but
Right, okay.
do you want to say something about Sunrise, because I know you really like that, about the topic of it?
Yeah, no, look, it's all about growing up in Northern Ireland and the troubles in Northern Ireland. And yeah, like he hits the nail on the head. Like, again, it's what I like about Divine Comedy, when they write it, they paint the picture well. He talks about his own experience and describes that, and through that, then you understand where he's coming from and how he feels about. He gets his message across, essentially, about his views on the troubles, I suppose.
And it's one of the few songs that ends on a kind of a positive note, like where, he does. He's very rarely talked about his troubles, and he's often said that music, in a way, making all this music has been his way to escape from what was the, you know, horror of Northern Ireland, you know, from his youth.
He grew up. His father was a bishop at the height of the troubles. Like in 1969 is when it all kicked off, and he was a bishop around about then in Derry, and then he went to Enniskillen, and he's around for the Enniskillen bombing and all this. So he's at the coldface of the stuff that happened.
Absolutely, yeah. So it has to have affected him, and so that's why I think his writing is very fantastical. It's very, you know, like, there's a lot of escapism that seeps through, you know, through his lyrics. You know, it's almost like he's distracting himself from what real life is.
Yeah. How does it end again? I can't.
You know, it's kind of from the corner
You're
of my eyes.
6 feet off under the ground.
Oh yeah, whether it's kind of like, you know, who cares what name you call a town? Who cares when you're 6 feet beneath the ground? And it does, and then the falsetto, beautiful falsetto, and then lovely little kind of bells, and the strings start to come in again, and the drums start booming, and, you know, it's all uplifting from there on in, because it's written about kind of the peace process, basically.
Yeah.
But one little criticism is that there is a sense in which it kind of defends the status quo. It's like, who cares what name you call a town? Who cares? I know, like, I'd say his rebuttal would be like, violence should never be, should never be condoned in any circumstance. But there is a sense in which, you know, when he's saying that, who cares what name you call a town? I don't know. Like, it's not that simple. Like, I think it's in some ways it is. The message is simplistic, and maybe that's all, you know, that's the way it should be. But
yeah, I know what you mean. Like, okay, practically, now it has an effect, so you can't disregard it. I suppose the theme, or what he's going for, is a sense of these things don't matter in the grand scheme of things. It's just live and be a good person. I suppose what he's trying to get at, as opposed to, when you think about, like, a name, really, what does a name mean? That's what he's trying to get at. And I know, that's what you know as well. But yeah, it has. It is loaded, and in practical terms, it's not as simple as that. Yeah, very true. But it is nice, as you say. Like it starts slow and then he gradually builds it up and up and up, like the sunrise. Like it does gradually get higher and higher, and then it hits the peak at the end, and it ends on somewhat, yeah, I suppose a positive note in the sense of, you know, maybe there's a way. I don't know.
Maybe,
Uh,
yeah, maybe there's hope, I suppose,
Hope,
in an album
exactly.
that is
Yeah, yeah.
quite kind of dark for a lot of the album. Yeah, just that National Express isn't dark. It's this we're not going to say much about it except I think it's a cracking pop tune, about his observations of different characters on the National Express, and it's just a fun tune. It's not my favorite Divine Comedy tune by any means, but still.
Yeah, the one thing I don't get is like the National Express is a bus service, but I never saw any hostess or host like with a serving
Well,
drinks and tea
well,
on a bus, on the train maybe.
well, we don't live in England.
No, yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, yeah, it doesn't happen in Ireland.
Anyway,
we're
that's
less
always
sophisticated here.
that's always the one thing I think about when I hear the National Express. But yeah, it's great. Like it's a good song. It's a good song. But it's just I'm probably sick of it. I think that's probably part of it.
Rightio. So we're ready to move on to number 2. So we obviously rate Finn de Thekla very highly, don't we?
Yeah. Well,
Ah,
podium position. For,
Alright, okay, so number 3. So on number 2, the suspense is there's only 2 albums left, and if you're a fan, you know which 2 are left. You might actually be surprised by one of them being left. I'd say a lot of fans wouldn't have it that highly. But the one we're talking about right now is number 2, Absent Friends.
Yeah, Absent Friends. It's funny when you said Fan de Siècle is Divine Comedy in their greatest pomp and all the orchestration coming forward. I feel like Absent Friends has that. Like it feels, even when you look at the artwork, it captures the whole feeling. It's very orchestral focused. The production values are immense. Like
I'd say they're better than Fan de Siècle. I think
his vocals are so crisp. It's just, and then everything is so to the fore, and it's it's just really, really, really polished.
Exactly, yeah. It's really, yeah. It's such a polished, just well made album. You know, texturally so rich, and yeah, it's just beautiful songs. And a nice variety of topics that are explored in the songs, and yeah, it's just a joy to listen. For me, a joy to listen to from 1 to 11. Now, where did we rank it? Did I think I only had it number 5. Did I?
Number 5 for you.
You had 5, and it was your number 3.
Number 3, yeah. So
Yeah. So that's 8 points. It's a level with Fan de Siècle, but
yeah, I'm happy with where I put it there. Like I think it's solid. It works really well as a unit. Like everything fits really well together. And the songs flow well. You can put it on and you're happy to listen to them all more or less, apart from 1 or 2 maybe that I'm like Come On Billy Bird, for example. This is an album I had primarily for a mutual friend because I remember hearing that. I remember I saw the Divine Comedy. I've seen them twice live. I saw them once in Galway. I don't know. I know it's a good while ago now, but he was on his own and he came out and he played our mutual friend first of all on the piano, and everybody sort of just like this emotional hit straight away, and you're thinking, what the hell? And then he goes into some sort of jaunty pop song, and you're thinking he comes straight out with the with the with the big guns.
with the big gun, yeah.
And I didn't really know the song at that time. So what the hell? What a song! And then it really caught me. So I said, right, I have to buy that album. But in a way, it's not a bad way to go out because I've been at concerts where the crowd don't really get into it until like the encore, and then like, they play the hit at the encore, and everybody is right behind it, and then there's a real atmosphere, and that's only like 3 or 4 songs long, whereas they've been plodding along before that.
Yeah.
So it's not a bad strategy, but it did jar a little bit when you're sitting there with your jaw open. The next thing
You don't want to peak too early though, like in
Yeah.
life. But I know what you're saying. I think it's good to start off strong for sure.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, so when I had the album, I remember Come Home Billy Bird. That sort of a song jumped out at me, but not in a good way. I don't really like it. It's fine as a pop uplifting pop song, but it's not. When I listen back again for this, I don't know why, but I definitely had more of appreciation for it. And songs like Leaving Today, those sort of, um, I suppose, more moody songs, and that really take advantage of the orchestra. That really
Struck a chord,
struck a chord,
yeah. Leaving Today is about, I suppose, the character is kind of working away from home and has to leave the wife and the child, and how difficult it is. Sometimes the lyrics kind of, it's not even that hard to tell whether the character um, wants to, like, in a way, wants to escape family life. Sometimes I get that impression, but you can read it either way. That he's just, it's tough leaving the family at home. But it's, there's a really nice, as you say, kind of the phrase you keep coming back to is crescendo, or like, where I can stay if you ask me, that at the end, and then the violins just just really they really amp up the kind of the violins there. It's plods along at the start, but I still think it is pretty, and in the context of the album, it really works well.
I think the first few songs, Absent Friends, Sticks and Stones, Leaving Today, love that flow there. And then, okay, for me personally, I'm not the biggest Billy Bird fan, but then The Wreck of the Beautiful, Our Mutual Friend, two standouts for me. And after that, I find, like, they're fine. The songs are all okay. Freedom Road, actually, I quite enjoy that. And even Lycus Team Lycus, I don't know how to pronounce that, but that's all. And Charm Life is good as well. But definitely, Wreck of the Beautiful, Our Mutual Friend, they're really, that's the peak for me.
So I get the impression you're saying this is an album with great peaks, and then a lot of songs that are just solid, no real low points, but
pretty much, yeah. Now the solid I find more solid than the others. So like when we're talking about Liberation, or talking about Promenade, like their songs there I didn't quite like as much. Whereas here, the definitely the level, the baseline is higher. That's the way I feel about it.
Yeah. I get you. I think Hannon himself at the time, and he doesn't always say this about his albums. I think at the time, and I'd wonder how highly he rates it. He put four of the songs in the, when he brought out a kind of greatest hits again, Charmed Life, and four of them were from Absent Friends. So I think for him this album means a lot to him.
Yeah.
I remember him saying in that kind of documentary that celebrated 30 years of Divine Comedy that he wasn't that connected to Regeneration, and that he had to go back home, and he says to home to Scott. Because Hannon is a very much, he's like Scott Walker is kind of his musical idol, and so he wanted to go back to his roots, and that's to make music that emulates kind of Scott Walker, I suppose, but obviously in his own way, and it's just a collection of really strong songs, really well, probably some of the best production in any of the Divine Comedy albums. Absent Friends, kind of deals, is a song about, it was actually initially, the melody was initially supposed to be, he was trying to write a song about the absent friends from the former band, and he was trying to do a tribute to them, and then he realized that's the sound of cringe, so he just decided to write about people whose lives were taken too early, like that we missed their full impact of what they could have had on us, like famous people, but just people like Little Jean, I think Seberg was whatever, which she was hounded, I think, to suicide, like by, was it the FBI? But there's another one, Leica, and this is why Leica's team, Leica is the dog that went up in his first ever dog that went up in space, and like again, it's another thing where he sings this song in quite a jolly way, but there's this very sort of a sadness to a lot of these stories, even though that it's uplifting music, but it's telling uplifting music telling very quite sad stories about certain people's lives that were taken too early. And the Leica's team, when you imagine it, he's like and I'd say Cathy Davey would definitely be very impressed with it. That when you put it in the context of the dog is up in space and how lonely it is, like it does really the music really does capture that kind of the dog being up in space. Freedom Road, I think, is a beautiful, really underrated Divine Comedy song, just gorgeous where it builds. you know, it just tells the story of a kind of a trucker, and maybe he's being a little bit arrogant, kind of telling about this character where he's about being a bit presumptuous, where he's kind of telling a story of a trucker who, um, you know, drives the Freedom Road, and but and you know he talks about that shit takes my breath away when I've seen the lightning storm, the power of a lightning storm, whatever. But then at the end he says, but I can't tell my friends about it because they're not gonna be in awe about it in the same way that I am. And I'm just wondering, well, why, Neil? Like, why? Just trying to say that these guys are generally uncultured guys, you know, like that, you know, like but I still think it's really well done, and I also think there's in that song the character kind of fantasizes about the freedom road of being young, but actually now it's a freedom road where it's just kind of there is like yes there's he gets to see some amazing things, but it's in the context of working in a quite mundane job. Um, our mutual friend, and there's one song I'll talk about. I think I really like kind of the banjo on my imaginary friend. I think it's a cute song. The Happy Got is a fun song. Though again, I'm not quite sure. I don't know very much about Goths. To be honest, do you know about much? Does he capture the life? Does he capture the psyche of a Goth very
I
well?
didn't
I don't
like
know.
the Happy Got is not one that I like a whole lot. It's sort of I'm trying to. He describes her clothes and all this sort of stuff in the lyrics. It's fine. Like it's a fine song. It's grand. Like it's definitely one. If I was to skip any songs in the album, that'd be one I would skip. I only find it okay. And it's songs like that, I suppose, is why I have it as third. But yeah, Charm Life actually I quite like. It's one that grew on me, I think.
Yeah, it builds up really well. I think Charmed Life is really good, but and it's almost kind of like an antidote to the moaniness of Regeneration. It's like this is like very much intentional. I'm ending this album with a very uplifting song where I actually express how grateful I am for life. I'm not moaning anymore, guys. I'm not moaning. I'm grateful, right? I'm not a moany pop star. Because with Regeneration is that like one thing about I think he genuinely did think that he was going to become big with it, and I think he was probably down in the doldrums because he thought he made a great album, didn't become big, didn't get the he got great reviews,
yeah.
but didn't connect with the public or whatever. We can't talk about this album without mentioning a mutual friend. It's kind of which is like I know you mentioned already, but for anyone who isn't who doesn't know much about Divine Comedy, if you were to point into one song,
Yeah, that'd be the one for me anyway.
That probably would be the one song. It's kind of generally revered by all Divine Comedy fans. Like it's kind of like I think it's probably in all our top tens, isn't it? Like it's just a classic song about a guy who meets a girl at the pub and then at the nightclub. I saw her later, and they get drunk together, and he thinks things are going great, but oh well, I'll leave you in suspense there.
Yeah.
Last song I done. We've only one more album after this. I know we're both tired, but the last song is "The Wreck of the Beautiful," which I think is a stunning song.
Yeah, it's great.
It's really I like, especially that bit where it's I thought I heard her call. It's really haunting. Maybe I heard nothing at all. Not haunting that way though, but it's just very, very haunting, and it can be taken literally, where he's kind of feeling sad for a great ship, which has the salt sea has took its toll, and it's no longer fit for purpose, and it's going to be brought to the breaker's yard. And just if you take it literally, there is something like that where he conjures up this image of the ship calling out, kind of being proud that it's like the fattened calf that knows that it's going to be killed, that the ship is doing the same, which is a nice image to do. But I also think of it as kind of an allegory for a friend as well, because it is about absent friends, that in a way it's like a friend you used to have who probably maybe got caught in drug addiction or something like that, where they weren't the person you once knew, and you had to take them away to rehab or something, and there's a part of you that remembers. You think you hear that you're the real person in there somewhere that you once knew, but they're not. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I suppose one to add to that, like the record, The Beautiful Our Mutual Friend, like one thing that I find in his albums is that he has that sort of, he plans it out well. There's that sort of ebb and flow, and the record, The Beautiful, seems a bit darker than, and then it goes into Our Mutual Friend, and it's sort of, well, it lifts at the start. And one thing that he does in Our Mutual Friend, I think, uh, that works really well, and he's done in other songs, is like this sort of word painting where the the music describes what's going on. So like there's like the beat, and the beat comes in, and then also at the end where it's, you know, this sense of this ominous sense that comes in, and that's reflected well in the music as well. So the music sort of is paired really well with the song. One thing I love in Our Mutual Friend is the oboe that comes in. Well, it's in there. The main sort of figure that comes through, the melody that comes through in the sort of chorus, is just lovely. It's just this lovely sort of melody line, but the tone of the oboe is just such a lovely sort of mellow sort of tone. It just comes through really, used really well.
Yeah, and it's so layered musically. Just the layers of melodic harmonies with using different instruments, and even the beat as well, like bum 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 bum. It's not like kind of a 3-3-2 kind of beat, time beat. Well, classic song. So I think will we just move on to our number one album of Divine Comedy? We finally got here. This will probably have to be split into 3 different sections. But our number one album, in case you haven't known, is Casanova from 1996.
Both of us ranked it second, so that meant aggregate score was number one.
Yeah,
which is fair.
Exactly, fair. Which is fair enough. But actually, you know, aggregate score, it's 4, which the next best is 8. Now, I would never see it as being that far ahead of the 4 or 5 albums before it. But look, I think it's a great album. It's a kind of one of the albums where after Promenade, you know, even though it was a very arty farty album in a way, Promenade, I think he saw the wave of Britpop and he said, you know what, there's a place for me here, and I'm gonna make some hits. You know, I'm gonna have me some of that action, and that's generally what he wanted to do. Yeah. So I think he went down that route. So it is probably one of the most accessible Divine Comedy albums. Like, there's not any that particularly that aren't accessible, but it's probably the most poppy record. Probably has the most hits, most recognizable hits. To me, what's so strong about it is I think it's just so strong from 1 to 11. Like, I don't think it's a bad song here. It's just cracking, you know, banger after banger. And it's about, it kind of explores kind of, you know, the psyche of a Casanova figure, and, you know, from the early songs how he's starting out, and then later on how he's becoming more and more kind of chauvinistic, probably misogynistic, and towards the end of the album he kind of becomes, you know, like when he becomes like at the start he's, you know, he's trying to be a Casanova, but he gets tricked in something for the weekend, becoming more like Alfie. You can still see he's kind of trying to battle his demons. He wants to be Alfie, but he feels like he's above that, you know, where he says like, now I'm resigned to the kind of life I reserve to other guys less smart than I, you know, the kind that always end up with the girls. And then he has a lyric like that, which was very dodgy these days. Like, everybody knows that no means yes. But we have to remember that he's always speaking in, like, he is as a character, yeah. And he's kind of he's
not his own personal.
It's not his own personal opinion. He is this kind of morphing into this Casanova character, and he's expressing the. So he through the songs and and it's a great progression from song to song. You can see the progression of how the character is changing and becoming more unhinged towards the end, as we'll probably get to. I started off with Something for the Weekend, where it's kind of like just something in the woodshed, where it's a funny kind of, it's actually pretty funny.
Woodshed in another song as well, isn't there? Does it mention woodshed? More recent ones. I can't remember.
Is it something in the wood? Is it from I think it's a reference to some book. I don't know if it's an Ian Porter book. Is it?
Right. No, I was listening to. I can't remember which song it is, but I remember you mentioned the callback to Billy Bird, and then I heard a callback to Woodshed, and I said, I wonder what's going on here. But sorry I interrupted you. But on something for the weekend then.
Oh no, I just said that it's kind of I'd say one of those kind of pretty humorous songs, and in that song, the actual Casanova gets kind of tricked. That basically, like he was kind of and it's also there's always a sense where the Casanova recognizes that he's a fraud. He's that something in his genes told him to come clean, that he was not who he. I'm paraphrasing, but that he was not who he pretended to be. Or no, something in his heart. What's oh, I'm right now at this stage, but it kind of. But basically, the idea is that she kind of says, "Look, they're gonna have, he's trying to, persuade her to have sex with him," and then she's kind of saying, "But there's something in the woodshed." So there's something in the woodshed, and I'll go all the way with you if you go all the way. If you go, if you just go all the way with me and go and see in the woodshed, and then basically, finally he goes away to the woodshed, and there's two girls waiting for him who basically knock him down and take all take all his.
Caught this from the song at all.
But it's all, at the very end was when he woke, they were gone with his car and all his money.
Yeah, I haven't listened.
Even
to
they hear the laughing at the start. It's the little girls hiding in the woodshed.
All right, because when I listen to the song, I haven't listened to the lyrics. Like I treat this like a pop song. Same with Becoming More Like Abby, the Frog Princess. I haven't examined the lyrics, but just I find them as catchy pop songs.
Yeah.
And that's part of like my first impressions. Like when I was listening to all the different albums in order and starting with Liberation, getting on to Promenade, Casanova, I felt like I could feel him finding his feet a bit more. And then when I was here, the first time I listened to it, I said, okay, this feels a bit more, I'm more interested in this one. But then as I got to listen to it a few times, initially it was a case of, okay, the hits, the pop songs, I was more impressed with them than I was my previous knowledge of them. So that was the first thing. But then the growers grew on me a bit more, and they really come out. But Something for the Weekend, something Becoming More Like Alfie, they're great pop songs, and they also there's a bit more to them than your average pop song, and more so than I thought before. And the Frog Princess,
more depth or lyrical depth or musical. Well,
musically, like there's a bit, like it has the melody, but then it lifts. There's a bit more of a lift to it.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean. That I'd forgotten about, I suppose. But
moving through, you go on. You were saying,
I suppose that's the songs. But then, like, as I listened to it, like the growers really got on me. Like In and Out in Paris, London, Charge, Songs of Love. That sort of progression, that passage, I think works really well. It's like sort of dark, and then it gets probably darker, and then there's some sort of respite with Songs of Love, which is really good. Charge is one. It's definitely a grower, because when you hear it first, it's a little bit hard to, like, it's dark, and there's not really much of a melody. But then the bit I love is the falsetto at the end. It's just it just comes out of nowhere, and you're thinking, wow, this is great.
Charge is when you see In and Out in London, In and Out in Paris and London and Charge, and you put those two together, like Middle Class Heroes is kind of, it's basically kind of, the character kind of, it probably seems to come from middle class background, but he's sneering at the mundanity of, middle class life. Is that like he's better, he's above that kind of thing. That's the take I get from it. But In and Out in Paris and London is now he's fully morphed into the Casanova, and I love the In and Out, like the. What is it? I know we'll get to Charge, but I'm only going to say In and Out of Paris and London because it's before it in the track list, where there's a kind of an aspect where he says, and I refuse to, when he talks about sex, I refuse to take it all too seriously. It's such a strange activity. It's too peculiar to be taken any other way. He's like, his attitude to sex now is it's just sort of, he cannot connect it to emotions or kind of some kind of connection at all. It's just it's all about kind of hedonistic pleasure for him at this stage, and even like the in out shake it all about, like it's kind of
Reduces it just to the
reduces it to like the hokey pokey, like you know, like but then charge is it always it's more becoming more misogynistic now. Or it's like it's kind of this notion of sex as war, and it has all these references like where he kind of you know, I suppose references the Churchill speech of, you know, we'll fight them you know, on the beaches we'll fight them, and then he's like, we'll fight them in the bathroom, we'll fight them in the and even the point where you know, also he talks about how the process of seduction involves a lot of oh my god, I'm tired now, like it involves a lot of deception. That's what I'm saying, where you know that line where it says, I have in my hand a piece of paper that says, let's make love, not this phony war thing.
Yeah.
Like that's a reference to Neville Chamberlain kind of saying about Hitler. I have in my hand a piece of paper that this man is has good intentions. I don't know exactly what the phrase is like. So all these different references, you know, but it really is about, feels like this character sees sex as about conquering the other person instead of you know, making love or whatever, you know.
Interesting, yeah.
Songs of Love is a song you quite like. Songs of Love, actually.
Everybody Irish anyway, and British knows Songs of Love from Father Ted, I suppose.
But they don't really know the
actual song. You know,
yeah,
the melody.
you know the melody, but the song is quite different, I would say.
Yeah, it's strange because when you hear it first, you think, oh yeah, Father Ted, and then you hear the words, and it is a different beast, definitely, because like the song. I like the song, the message, like it's again, it's sort of love type. Well, a song about unrequited love, I suppose. But it paints the picture of his experience, I suppose, as somebody who's not very good at women, or sort of reluctant to be able to participate in the mating game, and observing everybody else doing it. But he describes his experience of that, which, again, a case of show don't tell. He's like, through that you get a good mental image of what's going on, and
in his bedroom above, like I think it's lyrically one of his best songs. Like just to go to pale pubescent beasts roam through the streets and coffee shops. Their prey gather in herds in stiff knee-length skirts and wide-ankle socks. But while they search for mate, my type hibernate in bedrooms above, composing their songs of love. And then the next line is young uniform minds in uniform lines and uniform ties run round with trousers on fire and signs of desire they cannot disguise, while I try to find words as light as the birds that circle above to put in my songs of love. Now, I have a kind of a theory about this, is that there's an element of kind of
arrogance.
What?
Arrogance, or
arrogance, and sort of a bit of it. I kind of see this song as being, this is like, it's like if it was a movie, it'd be a flashback to when he was young, and this is where the resentment first festered in the person. It's almost this kind of like the character is a more eloquent version of a kind of there's more eloquent version of incel philosophy being sort of forwarded here, where like he's kind of describing, you know, the incels they talk about, they have no respect for the chads. The chads are just the kind of, you know, the normies, the jocks or whatever, the good looking lads who go around getting all the women, like, but like he sees them as just kind of just, these guys are just animals, kind of like just totally devoid of any kind of depth. And I'm the sensitive type. I'm the interesting person, and women won't but they don't actually they don't appreciate my qualities, you know, kind of way. And there's an element of that here, you know, like in this song. I find anyway.
When you were reading it out, like, that's fair, and I hadn't thought about that, but it does make a lot of sense. When you were reading it out, what came to mind to me was, it reminded me of that Patrick, is it Raglan Road and Patrick Kavanagh, and he talks about how he almost alludes to the fact that he's more superior as a poet, and it feels like Neil Hannon is saying he's a bit more superior because he's, you know, whatever the lyric is, but he's the fella writing the stories, and maybe he's a different class, he's a different breed to everybody else running around the streets.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a legitimate take as well, and I don't have a problem with an artist being arrogant. And I'd say Neil Hannon would happily say that he's arrogant when it comes to music and stuff like this. But there's also times like in his lyrics he can always hide behind this is the character here, like and I do think it is a character. Like I'm not saying that he's been disingenuous when he's saying character, but like but he'll say that the character does come from somewhere in here, but and then I'm embellishing it or exaggerating it, um. But yeah, that's just one little thing I'll say about that. The Frog Princess, of course, was probably the first ever song I've heard from Divine Comedy, and it just drew me in straight away. It may be a little bit problematic, and you can see the cracks kind of falling in the kind of Casanova's philosophy here, where he's kind of curious about where this. I met a girl; she was a complete mess. Can't remember the lyrics fully, but I saw nothing through her see-through dress until she whispered in my ear, "You don't really love me, and I don't really mind because I don't love anybody. That stuff is just a waste of time." And then all of a sudden, he's kind of curious. This is what makes him curious about her. Is hold on a second. The way some kind of Casanovas to get a kick out of uh, or the type of man that gets a kick out of women falling in love with him. He needs to get the validation from her, and he becomes more curious about her. And he presents a kind of there's a bitterness in the Casanova about this when he's like very dismissive of her in the song. Like some people say, the Frog Princess is like a racial slur because it's about French. In the video you can see this French woman, like that's where the Frog Princess goes. It's also an inversion of the whole fairy tale of the Frog Prince.
Yeah.
But it's a kind of a bit of a messed up song. But once again, the music is gorgeous in it, and I love the way it ends. I don't think he's a fan of it right now, but I just think I love the song. Like
Yeah. No, it is great. Like it is a standout. It's one of those standouts that when you hear it first, it's one of the it's an instant pop song.
And towards the 8 and 9, and this is something you mentioned to me later on. I just love the horn and the trumpets or the trumpets in the Princess as well. But A Woman of the World, which actually was initially one of the song that Neil Hannon sent to be the Father Ted theme tune, which a lot of people might not know. But this song, you can see the kind of a crack where he's talking about like a character where now seems to be he's looking at this woman, and there's a line in the song at some stage where he kind of says, maybe I hate her because I didn't create her, and then he says, maybe I love her because I want to be her, or something like this. There's almost kind of there's a gender dysphoria where he's kind of not. He's now beginning a bit resentful. He's jealous of women, and he doesn't understand them. But there's a part of him that he's just kind of going a bit mad. I'm not saying that if you're jealous for you're going a bit mad, but there's all sorts of thoughts going on there in that song. I think it's a really catchy song.
It's really it's catchy to the extent that it's cheesy. The catch.
The verse is kind of cheesy, and then the chorus is kind of much more. It's like a much more grander kind of pensive chorus.
Yeah, because if you had like the verse, if that was the theme tune, it'd be like something from some sort of 60s sitcom, that really old fashioned. If they had that as it wouldn't set the right tone at all. I think if that was used as the theme tune. So it's interesting.
You go on, yeah.
No, True Long Sleepless Night is the next song, which is probably my favorite of the album. It's the climax. Again, it's another example where he has a nice ebb and flow in the album, but it really builds to the climax here. And when you think the song is done, it just goes up to another level as well. And again, it's also a good example of where he has the contrast. Like in the verse, you have this sort of dark verse, and it's sort of like minor, like it's sort of a minor key, and then it goes, I don't know if it changes to the major, but it definitely goes to the major chords. And then it gives that bit more of a lift. And that sort of balance really is like it works really well. And also the falsetto in the chorus is great. And again, the falsetto in the chorus works really well because you're listening to it after you've heard the verse, which was sort of that bit more dark. There's less. It's not as interesting in terms of the melody. He's sort of speaking it a little, like There's not
Yeah.
much, not an interesting melody, but then he comes into the chorus and it works really well. I don't know what the theme of the song. I was trying to figure out the theme.
Yeah, I think in this song, the character is at this stage he's kind of going mad, and he's maybe ultimately having doubts about his philosophy. Like it's kind of like uh, Kierkegaard wins. Like he's realizing that aesthetic, the life of the aesthete is not a fulfilling life, and he's kind of like there's I think a line actually I might be able to get some of the lyrics here that stand out, but there was one that stands out to me about the chorus about I can
Well, the chorus, I could wear the perfume. What is it? I could put on the perfume. I could wear the dress sometime, which sort of sounds like. So when I heard it first, I thought, okay, this is the man, and he's talking, and given the the given the title, I thought, okay, maybe he's like sexually frustrated or something, and he's a bit more aggressive. And then he puts on the chorus comes in and it's falsetto, and I could put on the perfume, I could wear the dress sometime, think, okay, maybe this is the woman talking. And then goes, but I'll always be the bridegroom and never the bride. I said, okay, well, what's going on here? Is this like some sort of is it still the man talking, or
yeah,
what's the story?
I think like there's an element to it where the character just doesn't
Like a Jekyll and Hyde or something.
yeah, I don't think he's comfortable with being a man. Doesn't even know what being a man entails. He's not happy with what his masculinity does to a man. So I think there is a part of him that just longs to fucking be a woman now. Instead, it's that whatever I don't know how to best to articulate it now. I do have some of the thing where he says things like he's definitely falling apart. This rut has fast become a trench. This smell has turned into a stench of rotten dreams and stale ideals. The past is snapping at my heels. Oh, Danny boy, the pipes are blocked with bedtime blues and future shock. And there's another line here where I say, I'll scream until I've made myself critically ill. Oh, look, but you get the idea basically.
Well, it does
that
feel
he's coming to terms with the fact that his ideals are stale, and that he's a fraud, and that he's not fulfilled by this life, and it's
It does feel like he has some sort of meltdown then, like 2 quarters way through the
oh
song.
yeah, definitely.
And then it's sort of like, then that's when it gets really sort of heavy, and it hits the climax. And then, but musically, like, it's so cool because you have that sort of real heavy part, and then it goes into the chorus again, and then like just that contrast.
Yeah, and even the chorus at the end is also kind of heavy as well, and just drives the song home. And it's a cracking song, so energetic, so just a real. It captures the kind of disintegration of the guy's psyche like really well, I think. Yeah, so it's great. We won't spend too long, I think, on the last two because we're
Yeah, well, Team for Casanova is a bit of a not like it's like a postscript. It's like everything is done. It feels like the album was done then, and this is just it's almost like if when you're walking out of the film and the credits are rolling, that's what it feels like. And that's probably the idea of it as well. And the tune is sort of grand. It sort of reminds you of a few other tunes, but it's good. It's good.
I know that it does sound like it does remind you of a few other tunes, but I do think it builds up really nice and becomes very beautiful towards the end. Like so, yeah. And dogs and the horses.
I can't even remember what the Dogs and Horses is.
The Dogs and the Horses now is the very last one. Is the kind of the song where it's the one song that kind of deals with again a theme that he's very fond of is mortality, and like I think this where summer spring is gone at last, summer follows fast, and he uses kind of that whole pathetic fallacy of kind of using the seasons to describe how life passes by so quickly. And maybe it's the character. This is years in the future, and the character only has basically isn't misanthrope, but he does get some value from dogs and horses. But there is a nice line where it says the only thing to feel sad about is all the dogs and the horses you'll have to outlive. Like, and sometimes misanthropes can be like that they end up preferring animals, whatever, and even towards the end on his deathbed, he imagines the scenario of all the dogs and the horses they gather around your bed. They'll be with you when you say goodbye. It's just a nice kind of it's a musical way to end, and a really powerful way to end the album. I'm surprised you don't remember that.
I can't remember it.
You've had to listen to a lot of songs. Let's be honest. You've worked hard. In fairness to you, you've been a trooper.
I'm trying to find my notes here that because a lot of times I have notes of something that I can't even remember, but that's pretty it. Okay.
That's what we've pretty much. Our verdict is like great album. I think it's a brilliant album.
I think it's brilliant, and also I was surprised that I ranked it high and you ranked it high. In that I was expecting this to be an unusual ranking to have it high, but obviously
Look at what did I have as number 2? It's kind of one of those ones where for me, those top 6, even top 7, are all very close for me.
Yeah.
For me, and I just think that it's just on the basis that I do like the kind of the concept. I think that's very well explored. So that gives extra points, and I do think it's pretty much very strong the whole way through, like really strong the whole way through. I'm not saying the other albums aren't, but yeah, look, it's just a great album. But your overall thing, do you want any final thoughts? We're both desperate to finish because we're so tired.
No final thoughts. I think definitely my after listening to all the Divine Comedy albums, have a greater appreciation definitely for the growers. Songs like I'm forgetting the names. True Long and Sleepless Night. Songs like True and Long and Sleepless Night.
We're tired, folks. This has been a long day.
Songs like True and Long and Sleepless Night.
Like, we're only going to get about 10 views, by the way. After all this,
I have such a great appreciation for songs like that, and that's the value in it. And I no longer consider Divine Comedy to be a novelty act. Basically,
there we go. Consider him to be one of the great Irish artists of all time, and probably maybe one of the greatest world artists of all time. Yeah, look, I hope I expressed my admiration for this band enough that some people who have not who are watching, who might watch, who have not explored this band or discovered this band, would feel compelled to do so. We would say Casanova is probably a good starting point because it is in some ways their most accessible album. It's got a lot of hits in it. But you've kind of heard the descriptions there, like the Absent Friends is kind of very rich. Regeneration would be more, as you say, if you're into indie or if you're into kind of Radiohead, there's
a good way in.
And then Promenade for me is kind of one of the more classically beautiful albums. Like there's so many great albums. All I'll say is this: if you like the album, subscribe to the YouTube channel, or like the podcast, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Share it with friends, give us a like, give us a comment, and and hopefully we'll have more content for you coming up soon. Do we know for sure who the next one we're doing? Are we doing U2?
We're doing U2. Yeah, we're doing U2.
We're going to do U2 next time. So I won't be talking as much. I won't be being the domineering one in the next conversation. You're going to have to produce all the context and all the lyrical analysis.
All the good content. Okay, right. We'll leave it there.
All right.
All the best.
Thanks, folks.
Bye bye.